I'm Carolyn, and I'd just like to say a few words about the second lesson in our practice group and the story that we are using, the story of the ugly duckling. Why would we use that story? What does that have to do with grief? Well, we talked earlier about the 5 gates of grief. And the second gate that we mentioned is the places in ourselves that have not known love. These are parts of us which we're ashamed of or embarrassed about, that we experience as defective and we try to hide from the world. Whenever any part of us is denied, we're living in loss. And that's really important to remember. That's why the places that have not known love is one of the gates of grief. For some people, it might be their sexual orientation or their gender identity. For others, it might be an addiction. For others, it may be their anger or their fear. In this culture, it's less acceptable for women to show their anger than their fear. It's more acceptable for men to show their anger than their fear, and more acceptable than for men to show their tears. So these are parts that we've had to send away. And we've also sometimes had to send away what Jung calls the bright shadow, or parts of us that are creative, humorous, or compassionate. You see, when we send these parts away as children, and we don't do it consciously, when we send them away, we begin to create what Robert Bly calls the long black bag of the shadow. We stuff these parts of us that are unacceptable into this long black bag, and they don't go away. They just kind of lay around there, and later in our lives, they come out in some way. They come out usually in unacceptable ways if we haven't began to claim them. And so, shame and shadow are very connected. Shadow is really caused by shame. And so, as we look at the story of the ugly duckling, we can certainly relate, no matter who we are, what gender we are, what race we are, we can certainly identify with that story. Because in that story, we see a part of ourselves. And so the writing prompts that we have used, and we would ask you to really think about these before session 2. First of all, for what qualities were you shamed or blamed in childhood? And what were the reasons for that? Did anyone give you reasons? Did you have to just kind of figure out what the reasons were? The second prompt, what qualities in yourself did you send away or minimize because of pressure from others? Maybe you are the young man who wanted to become an artist, but some father figure said you have to become a doctor or a scientist like me. Maybe you are the young woman who wanted to become an athlete or an accountant, but someone said, no, girls don't do that. The third prompt asks, what people or activities did you resort to in order to find love and acceptance, but found that they weren't really there for you? It kind of looked like they might accept you for who you were, but in the final analysis, they didn't or couldn't. And the fourth prompt is, what were the gifts of your exile? The gifts. These gifts may have helped you reclaim some of the qualities that you sent away. How so? So enjoy the ugly duckling story and take from it what you need to take from it. And know that your grief is welcome here, your strength is welcome here, your vulnerability is welcome here. We look forward to being with you to talk about and live the recovery of the ugly duckling.